want to say that it refers to the Egla Rufa, that when Yaakov was learning with Yosef, the last thing that they studied together was the Parsha of Egla Rufa. I'm not going to dispute those opinions, but I just want to add one little thing. There was someone in my shul that once came to me and said he was invited, his son lives in South America, and he invited him to come. Should I go or shouldn't I go? And it depends if he sends you a ticket. If he just invites you and doesn't send you a ticket, then don't go. If he sends you a ticket, then you know that he means it. When the brothers came back to Yaakov, and they told him that Yosef is so and so and he wants us to come, Vayofik Levi was in doubt, does he really want me? But when Vayadas Agolas, he saw that there was wings also. So Mameli said, I was supposed to be here a few months ago, and that time there was a problem with Agolas. But this time, when I got a call at exactly 1 o'clock, and someone says, I am the driver and the car is outside, and I say, hey, these people really mean it. So that's the Musa the Bedicha. I have also there's a pasuk in the Chumash that when Avram was traveling, so it said that Rashi brings it, that he was short funds when he was traveling, so he didn't. It seems like he borrowed money, and then when he returned, he paid his debts. The Dashonim asked a simple question. If comes a stranger to you that you don't know him, and he asks you for a loan, will you give him a loan? How did the people give him a loan to begin with? That they had to needed to pay it back later? So the Mefarshim explained that what happened was Yaakov, Avram, he went all around spreading Yiddishkeit. He was the first, what you call shliach, that to spread Yiddishkeit. And wherever he came, he got the people together, and he spoke to them about Torah and mitzvahs and everything, and the people asked him questions. It was a novel thing to them. The whole idea was novel, and they weren't intrigued with it, so they asked him questions. So Bachazirasai, he didn't have answers to them. They asked him, if your God is so good to you, take care of you. So the Torah tells you that Bachazirasai, when he returned, he paid up his debts. The debts means the answers that he owed to the people. The people that asked him questions about an Eibishter, now he paid them back, and they saw he's a very wealthy man. So I'd like to say over here today that I have a debt that I owe Rabbi Oberlander. And for me, I want to pay the debt. And I'll tell you what my debt is. Very interesting thing. When Rabbi Oberlander assumed the Rabbonis here in the Kehilas, there was a Kabbalah Sponim that was made. Or you want to call it, in English you can call it an installation. They installed the new rabbi. And I speak to Rabbi Oberlin from time to time on the phone, and I told him about, in honor of his coming here, it was that there's a Gemara in Brachos, that the Gemara says, when the students of Rabbi Ami would part from each other, in other words, when one of them went off to a position, so they give him a bracha. And the bracha that they gave him was, what does it mean? Your world you should see it during your life. So Rashi is very strange. Rashi says you should find your needs. In other words, wherever you're going to be, we hope that you'll manage over there, that the people will properly take care of you. But I told them above that Olamcha or Olam comes from potential. Helen, from the word Helen. Helen means what is not revealed. Every person has empire. what is revealed and what not revealed. And there are many people that are zoicha, that their powers come out and their plans come out to the extent that everyone that sees it realizes that this person is reaching his potential. And I wish him that he should reach his potential over here, because he has, Baruch Hashem, many kaichos nalomim, hidden powers that could be and should be revealed. So he thanked me for it, and he told me, another rabbi told me the exact same thing. Wow. Okay. It didn't throw me off the line, and I told him a story that I had in my shul. In the yeshiva, we used to dismiss on Friday at 12 o'clock. Erev Shabbos, 12 o'clock was dismissal. I didn't go home at 12 o'clock. I would always go home a half hour later, because I wanted to make sure that all the buses got home and all the children got home, that there's no problem. When I traveled home 12:30, I would turn on the radio, and at that time there was a Jewish radio program called WEVD, if anyone remembers such a thing. Ben Besenko, he used to introduce Rabbi Weinberg's Tanya Shir, Ben Besenko. And I was listening, there were rabbis that would speak to make appeals of us, and then a rabbi said a drasha. And I said to myself, I like this drasha. Shabbos and Shul. So innocently, I get up Shabbos and Shul, and I say this drasha. After davening, a yid comes over to me. He says, Rabbi, I heard the same drasha from Rabbi Cohen on the east side, this drasha. I didn't lose myself, but I said, let me tell you the truth. We both took it from the same book. So even though perhaps what I said to Rabbi Oberlander at that time, I took it from a book that the same rabbi also had the same book, but I'd like to say something today which I think is original. That Ayomcha Tira B'chayecha, Rabbi Oberlander, means that the world that you are accustomed to, you should see during your lifetime, which means as follows. There are many times that a person gets a position as a rabbi, and it's a eretz a chelas yesh beham. It turns out to be a place where they eat up the rabbi, and they make them a lot of trouble. And many times you get what the Rebbe quotes many times from the Sma, that Das Balabatim is Heper Das Torah. That there's Balabatim that they think that they know, but their views are not compatible with Torah. So the bracha that they gave was that Olamcha, the Olam that you grew up in the yeshiva world, in the Abonis world, this Olam you should see throughout your lifetime. And Baruch Hashem, I think seeing the crowd and seeing the advances and the accomplishments of the crowd, I can say that you were Zoicha to Olamcha Tira B'chayecha, to have an Olam of Mispalalim, an Olam of B'nai Torah, an Olam of members who are compatible with your way of thinking, with what you were brought up with. And I'll just conclude. It says Olamcha Tira B'chayecha is one thing they said, and then the Gemara says that they said V'achrischa the Olam Haba. So in Mela, Baruch Hashem, you have an Olam, and you're matzliach with them, and they are happy with you, I'm sure. Mela, you should be zeicha to Olam Haba, say in Olam Hazeh, and say in the emes of Olam Haba. This is what's to pay a debt. Now, when I get to the subject matter is Hey Tavis. So there was a lot of controversy here, and in many shuls, in New York also, we have the same question: do you say Tachton or do you not say Tachton? So the simple answer is that, let's see what the Rebbe did. The Rebbe said Tachton on Hey Tavis. In fact, by one of the first minyonim, after the Hey Tavis celebration, they were trying not to say Tachton, and the Rebbe turned around and asked if there's a chosim here. And since then, they say Tachna. So the question is, how do you explain that even though it's Chag HaChagim, and it's Yom HaBoyed, the Rebbe gave it a lot of titles and a lot of descriptions of the greatness of this day, and still we say Tachna. And I'd like to say something, which is my opinion. Not everyone may agree with me, but I think that we have to realize that as great as this day is, it's also a sad occasion. It's like there's the expression, Chevra Tekiya B'Libov B'Sitra Dor, that on one side there's happiness, and on one side there is the opposite of happiness. What do I mean that it's a sad occasion? This occasion of Hey Tevis destroyed the Rebbe's family. In other words, the whole family consisted of the Rebbe and a brother-in-law, a Rebbe and a wife, and a brother-in-law and a sister-in-law. And due to this occasion of Hey Tevis, the husband left the wife left the husband, and the sisters were no longer at the same terms that they were before. So as happy as it is, as great as it is, still there is reason to say Tachna also today. That's my opinion when I get to the Shaila about saying Tachna. Before we get to the actual subject, everyone is amazed and talks about, all the people that talk about Hey Tevis talk about the judge. The judge, Sifton, his name was, and his wisdom, and how they fought in court, and the lawyer Nat Lewin, who was a great lawyer, and he had another lawyer, a partner by the name of Shostak, about how they won. So I said to myself, according to the dictum that love with the Zeit, you should live according to the time. So this week's Parsha, the Parsha of this past Shabbos, really talks about a court. Talks about a Nat Lewin by the name of Yehuda, and talks about a judge, Sifton, by the name of Yosef. That's what the Parsha Vayigash is about. Vayigash Eilav Yehuda. Yehuda approaches him. He approaches the bench, and he delivers his defense for his brother. He has a brother, a young fellow, who's being accused of committing a robbery, of stealing a very, very valuable goblet, and Yehuda has to defend him. So I'd like to spend some time to explain this whole story with Yehuda and Yosef. Before we get to the Svarim or the details of the books, there's a Gemara in Chagiga, on the Dalvik in Chagiga. The Gemara says that Rabbi Eliezer Havi Bochi. Rabbi Eliezer would cry when he came to a certain pasuk. A pasuk in the Parsha of Vayigash. It says in the pasuk, that Yosef said to them, Ani Yosef, ha'oid avi chai. He says to them, after Yehuda presented his whole defense, so Yosef says, hey, by the way, I have to be Yosef. And by the way, tell me, is Dad still alive? A very simple question. They should have said, oh, thank you, we're happy to hear it. And the pasuk says, his brothers couldn't answer him because they became frightened. Now the question is, a few questions. Question number one. When he says to them, I'm Yosef, that's something new that he revealed. But he asks, what kind of question is that? He knows the whole time he's asking about the old father, and they came and they brought him regards from the old father. Not only did they bring him regards from the old father, but the old father sent along some gift, some different type of foods to bring to Yosef. And every time Yosef had met them, when he saw Binyamin, he said, hey, by the way, how's Dad? Now he says some question. So he wants to say, I need Yosef. Gives him the hate. But what kind of questions are Oid Avichai? Number one. Number two, to answer the question, Oid Avichai, they could answer one word, yes. Very simple. Yes, not more. And it says that they couldn't answer him, they had no answer. And why was Rebbe Lezer crying? Because Rebbe Lezer says that when the Yosef said to the brothers, Ani Yosef, this is a tremendous review. And he says, wow, he says, if when a boss of Adam asks a question and he can't answer it, imagine if the Eibusher will ask a question, what will you say then? Did Yosef ask any question? Did Yosef say any Musa? Nothing of the sort. So what's Rebbe Lezer saying that he's crying because of Yosef's heartfelt question with Ani Yosef and Oid Avichai. So to explain it, I'd like to explain it in the following way. First, we have to know how Yehuda presented his case. Like we talk about Matt Lewin, how he presented his case. How did Yehuda present the case? A lawyer knows that when he has a client and he has to defend his client, then the client is insanity. My client is a Meshuggah. He's sick. You can't do anything to him. Send him to an institute, but you can't punish him. Insanity. Another way that a lawyer defends his case is that there's no basis to the whole case. The whole case is a lie. You create a person, and the whole thing is false. It's all false. The third thing that a lawyer does is if the insanity didn't work and disproving the accusation didn't work, so tried all these things. Now, there is a medrash in last week's Passion that Yehuda said to Yosef, and the Torah said, when can you take for a slave if you can't pay for it? But if you can pay for it, don't wash your mask. Yehuda is speaking not to Yosef, his brother, he's speaking to a Goyish judge. And to the Goyish judge he says that in our laws it's written, what's wrong? You forgot where you are? Teretz is, Yehuda said to Yosef the following. He said, our Torah is universal. And our Torah is above human comprehension. Now the Torah says that if someone steals, what should you do? You should sell him as a slave. Okay, good. To whom should you sell him as a slave? Who's going to buy him? A poor man's going to buy him. A poor man also doesn't have the money. Who's going to buy him? A rich man, right? Which rich man is foolish to take a gun in his house as a slave? Doesn't make sense. The whole Torah doesn't make sense. I'm going to go and spend money to hire this crook that he should come to my house and rob whatever he can get away with. Our Torah that's universal would come up with such a concept. He says, obviously, There are two types of ganovim. One type of a ganov is someone that steals because it's a sickness. In English, it's called a kleptomaniac. In other words, he likes to put his hand in other people's pocket. But he's shot with them in the pocket. And then there's a type of person that steals out of poverty because he's broke. Know that he have to steal. So the Torah says, that when do you sell someone as a slave if he doesn't have? If he has, then he's a sick person. And if he's a sick person, so who will take him into the home? But if he doesn't have, take him into the home, give him a place where to live in, and he'll be rehabilitated and will come out a good person in society. She says, this young boy that you are accusing, he comes from a rich family. Being that he comes from a rich family, it doesn't make sense that you should hold him as a slave. And why not? Because he's insane. He's sick. So therefore, that was his first defense. Insanity, that according to our title, which is universal and is logically proven correct, the whole idea of selling someone as a slave is only if he is poor and he stole out of poverty, and then you're selling him to rehabilitate. But over here, you're dealing with a sick boy. That's one thing. That was the first defense that Yehuda gave to Yosef. Then he continues on in the Pasha with a whole lecture, which seems totally superfluous, totally extra. He starts saying as follows: Adayni Shalas Abadav Lema, you asked this question, and we have another. What does all we got to do? Because he asked the question, so therefore, Binyamin is not a Ganav. Binyamin stole a thing, regardless of what I asked you. It was maybe unimportant. It was not Negeya at all, but still, what's it got to do? But Yehuda was very smart. Yehuda says, what's the problem over here? Besides the fact that my brother is insane, as I just explained, besides that, you're accusing him of stealing a special type of kais, a special goblet that you have, right? This goblet tells you everything, right? And it's indispensable, and it's of extreme value, and it's not replaceable, right? Yeah. Yehuda says to him, listen, Yosef, if you have such a goblet, why did you ask us if we have a father or a brother? Why did you look into your goblet and see that we have a father and a brother? We know all the answers. Why did you ask us all these questions? That shows that your goblet is a plain plastic cup over here, which is not worth anything. And B'meila, so your whole case is up in the air. There's no case of it. Nothing happened. Nothing was stolen. Nothing was taken of any value. And then, finally, after Yehuda showed that his brother's insane, and after he showed that Yosef has no case, he says, you know what? Even if you don't think he's insane, and even if you think that he has a case, but have Rachmanis. Have Rachmanis, because the time will come, when he'll come back, and the father will see Kehilas, and that the young ones are there, God forbid, he may expire, he may get a heart attack, who knows what may happen to him. Have Rachmanis. And Yehuda rested his case. Now it comes Yosef's turn. Yosef says to them, I heard everything that you said, but in response I want to tell you one thing. Ani Yosef, I am Yosef, and Oid Abichai, is my father still alive? Did you ever make all these calculations, all these years that passed when you knew that I was alive and my father was struggling and sick about it and everything? Did you ever think about it? You never even thought about my father. What are you telling me to have Rachmanis? did you have any Rahmanas on your father? Therefore, the Pasuk says that they couldn't answer him. They had no answer because it was like a knockout or playing a game of chess and playing checkmate. So that was the greatness. We don't have to go look about a not ruin and a siftim. Baruch Hashem, we have lawyers like Yehuda, and we have a judge like Yosef that took the Yidden out of Golus Mitzrayim, should take us also with Mashiach to Canaan.
Agadei atrivamno karnu sadik v'chol karnei shoim atrivamno karnu sadik al bishvoi shezi Allah atziz Bechol karnei deshoim agad Rimamno karnei Agadei atrimamno karnei sadik Hey Yahweh Baal B'Yisrael Shezi Allah Baal B'Yisrael Shezi Allah V'Yatzis B'chol karnei deshoim agadei Rimamno karnei sadik B'chol karnei deshoim agadei Rimamno karnei sadik Baal B'Yisrael Shezi Allah Yatzis Israel Aha hey hey Baal B'Yisrael Shezi Allah Yatzis Israel V'chol karnei deshoim agadei Rimamno karnei sadik B'chol karnei deshoim agadei Rimamno karnei sadik Ahey Of Yatzis Israel Baal B'Yisrael Shezi Allah Yatzis Israel V'chol karnei deshoim agadei Rimamno karnei sadik B'chol karnei deshoim agadei Rimamno karnei sadik Aha Baal B'Yisrael V'chol karnei deshoim agadei Rimamno karnei sadik karnei deshoim agadei Rimamno karnei sadik
big mistake of being back above all the time. It's supposed to. And now I hear it from the one who wrote it himself, the author himself. Beautiful. Kasha.
According to the calendar, 38 years passed since the judge issued his ruling. But the truth is that the trouble that brought about the ruling started about a year or 2 years before that, which means that we're talking about something that happened approximately 40 years ago. And the lubavitch or the Rebbe said that this is one of the greatest simchas that there are. And the Rebbe compared it to the Meiser with the Alpha Rebbe. And sometimes, in retrospect, you begin to say to yourself, what is this all about? What is it all about? I remember I once spoke to a group of children in the yeshiva about Kehilas, and I asked the children, what happened to Kehilas? What is it? What's so special? And I got one answer, basically one answer. We got the books back. We got the kids, the serious answer, we got the books back. So I said to the kids, does anyone have an idea how many books there were? So they all came up with different numbers. Different numbers, they don't know. How could they know? Then I said to the children, I said, does anyone have an idea what the value of the books are? So I started getting phenomenal numbers. $1 million, $5 million, $10 million. You know, kids use their imagination. And I said to myself, if that's the whole story, let's say $10 million. What's $10 million today to Lubavitch? Today, Lubavitch is the richest organization in the world. If you count the value of all the chabad houses over the United States, over the world, it's maybe as big as America's chayv of $1 trillion. Who knows? So that Kehilas is connected with Hanukkah. We just celebrated Hanukkah just a few days. And the Rebbe also connects Kehilas with Hanukkah. And there's a very interesting Gemara in Shabbos. The Gemara says in Shabbos, I think it was like Yossi, I don't remember who was it, that said that also the heart says Mois with Nei Hanukkah. That you're not allowed to count money in front of the Nei Hanukkah. Now we all know, seems like there's nothing new, even though there's a lot that could be said about it. But we say in Haneres Halol, Haneres L'Kodesh, Ve'ein Lanu L'Shus L'Shalom. We can't use them. If you can't use them, so then it makes no difference what you want to do. If you want to count money, or if you want to check your vegetables if there's bugs in them, you can't do it with B'nai Chanukah. So why did the Tana pick necessarily this idea of counting money for B'nai Chanukah? Because of many things. You can't do anything with B'nai Chanukah. And it says, why can't you? The more comes to the conclusion, because it's a bizu mitzvah. You're embarrassing the mitzvah by using the mitzvah for a purpose of your benefit. So I have a pshat. I don't know if Rabbi Ovalu will agree, but I have a pshat that there's a very interesting Rambam, and it's also in the Kitzur Shulchan Aruch. In the Kitzur Shulchan Aruch, when he explains what the Nes of Hanukkah was, what the Yavonim wanted to do, so he quotes a few words, and those words are really from the Rambam. And the Rambam says the Lashon that Shagavra, when they came against the Jewish people, Poshtu Yedayim b'Mamoinam. They also went for Jewish money. Part of the pshat is that whenever there's a war or there's lawlessness, so there's looting. You know, you like over here, when there's a riot in the street, so the Shvatzer right away begin to steal. So Poshtu Yedayim b'Mamoinam, that they saw an opportunity to get the money. Now, nowhere in the Nes of Hanukkah do we do anything to commemorate this thing that now our money is safe. Some want to say that the playing of dreidel is because they play dreidel with money. So but that's children. Children do it. Some want to say that that's the reason for giving Hanukkah geld. But again, Hanukkah geld is a thing with children. But where are all the adults? Where are all the people that took their money? Why were they quiet? Why didn't they figure out something that they could commemorate the Nes of Hanukkah? So I'm saying that the pshat in the Gemara is that also the house's moment with Ner Hanukkah, you're not allowed to count money by Ner Hanukkah, means to say that the Nes of Ner Hanukkah has nothing to do with money. That's what they're telling us. Even though Taka Pashti is able and people lost money, but this didn't interest the people at all. What interested them was that they made a gazette against Taita, and so on and so forth. And the Mela, that's what we're celebrating. We're celebrating not that the money that we didn't lose any more of it, or the money that we maybe got back, because Hanukkah has nothing to do with money. And if you connect Hanukkah with money, that's a bizu mitzvah. So, B'meila, getting back to Hey Tavis, I want to say that to connect Hey Tavis with money is a bizu mitzvah. Making the whole thing cheap. The Svarim in the library, I must tell you, I handled a number of those Svarim, getting them back. I never heard these Svarim before. I never saw these Svarim before. And I don't know, who knows if I'll ever see these Svarim. And most of the Svarim that were taken were not the type of Svarim that you have over here in the shul, that people use and people have and people want to have. So to connect Hey Tavis with money, we got back the Svarim, and now we're richer because our library is worth more money. That's a bizu mitzvah. And that the Chazal told us that also you're not allowed to connect the money with the Ner Hanukkah. So if that's the case, so then what is it all about? If not money, you know, someone once said money is a very important thing. It's ahead of everything that's second place. You know, so what is it all about? The answer is, I wrote about this. Some people may have read it, what I wrote. But I've learned from my experience that people don't read. And if they do read, they read one page and they get tired and they put down the book. And somebody once said, they asked him, why don't you write a sefer? So he said, because when's he going to look at my sefer? When he's ready to go to sleep, right? And I don't want to be in bed together with him. So people don't read, and people don't ever pay attention. In fact, in my shul last year, I spoke at length about Kehilas, and somebody recorded it on YouTube and on what do you call it, on Nash. And they say that there were over 1,000 people that heard it. A lot of people came over to me. They thanked me for telling them the whole story. Now, I printed thousands of copies over the years. 40, where were you all the years? Some of you had an eye in my son. But that's how it is. So I'm going to repeat certain things tonight, which I may have said before, which I may have written. And I ask everybody to be indulgent and don't get upset. And I'll try maybe to add some things also. Not to add things that didn't happen. That you don't need me for. I don't have the imagination. The truth is, the matter is that the prosperity of Kehilas is that we have it ever. That we have it ever. What do I mean we have it ever? Because the question is, what did Barry want? What was Barry interested in? Now, I'm not going to say anything negative about Barry, because Barry was the Enoch of our whatever, and the nephew of our whatever. So even though I did hear people that say negative things about him, and they besmirch him, I will not do that, because who am I to insult the Rebbe's family? But there was a serious problem. And the serious problem was, the question is, what gave Barry the idea to take this from him? So, the answer is, by profession, he was a physicist. And when he got married, he lived in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and he worked for Westinghouse over there as a physicist. A few years after that, he left Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and he moved to Montclair, New Jersey. And in Montclair, New Jersey, he wasn't a physicist anymore, but he became a financial consultant, guiding people, giving advice to people with investments and so on and so forth. It seems like he ran into financial trouble himself. Sometimes, you give the other person advice, but you become intertwined with your advice, and you end up losing. And he needed money. He came home to his mother, and he told her, I have a problem. I'm broke. So she said to him, well, he came up with the idea, look, there's a big library. Why don't I take a few sweaters from the library, and I'll sell them. I'll have some money, and I'll be able to manage. So what did he do? He used to come to 770, and the 770 building, I'm sure everyone knows 770, I don't know if to describe the building, but not everyone knows that the building of 770 was a building that was built in 1933. A one-family house with an elevator. That's something unique. A one-family house in 1933 with an elevator. And it consisted of 3 floors. The 3 floors was a doctor, and the doctor did things that you shouldn't be doing. In English, you call him an abortionist. And he ended up going to jail. And they had to sell the building. And when the building became available in 1940, lubavitch bought the building. The way that building is constructed is when you walk in, what we call on the first floor, the Beis Medrash. That was the recovery room. The recovery room for patients. From the Beis Medrash, you walk into another little room in the back, and that was the operating room. And I still remember when I was learning in 770, there was, like you see in a doctor's office, a showcase with a tile where you put the instruments and everything. There was, in the one corner, there was such a showcase even. In order for the patient to come to the doctor, you have to drive down the alley. In other words, the first building, right after 770, the first building, there's a ramp. And you go down that ramp, you come into a backyard. And the backyard, originally, was never used for rain. And 770 upstairs was too small, so they used the downstairs, the empty yard over there, they called it with a shalash. They would have a sukkah with a canvas on top of it, and then everyone would bring over there. Now picture, you're coming down the ramp, and you turn to your right. What do you have today? You have a wall, the miter wall. But that miter wall covers the garages that were under the building. There were 4 garages under the building where an ambulance would drive in and go into the garage, and from there the patient would come out and go upstairs to the place where the Rebbe used to daven Mincha Ma'ariv every day before it started davening downstairs. The elevator and the Rebbe's room was the doctor's office. The next floor where the Friedrich Rebbe lived, that was the doctor's apartment. I don't know, the top floor was the staff, nurses, others that lived in the, later when lubavitch bought it. So the second floor became the Friedrich Rebbe's apartment, and the third floor became the Rashag. That's the Rebbe's brother-in-law, the Rebbe's son-in-law, the Rashag, his apartment. The basement floor, when I worked in 770, going back quite a number of years, was the America's mailing department. You know, America's was public Sforim, and they had a little room over there where they stored the Sforim, and from there they shipped out the Sforim. There was also a time when the Bacham used to eat breakfast over there in that little place in the bottom. Now, picture this thing. You come into 770, Barry walks into 770, goes into the elevator, goes upstairs, takes the elevator to the 3rd floor, and he says, "Mom, how are you? Good morning." Then he takes the elevator, and he goes downstairs to the basement, all the way to the basement. He skips the main floor, all the way to the basement, and he walks out from the elevator. When you walk out from the elevator, you turn to your left, and there's a little alley. There's a little alley there. Some may remember that that little alley on the right side was the boiler room, where the Rebbe used to come down to burn the Chumash out of Pesach. If you went a little further, if you didn't stop, if you went a little further, there was a door. And that door went into the library that's under the steps. So before, the patient would come in normally, drive down the alley, turn into the park in the garage, then go out through that door, and turn around and go into the elevator, go up to the 1st floor, and he's in the doctor's office. This went on for quite a time. And Barry used to go in there, and he used to take Sforim. In order to be able to take Sforim, there was a librarian. The librarian's name was Reb Chaim Lieberman. He was the librarian of the Friedrich Rebbe's library. And He was a great bibliographer, very Adam Choshev in bibliography. For some reason, even though he's a Yid that had Mesilas Nefesh for the Friedrich Rebbe, and how do I know they have Mesilas Nefesh for the Friedrich Rebbe? His name is Chaim Lieberman. And how do I know he had Mesilas Nefesh for the Friedrich Rebbe? Because in Russia, they once interrogated him. They once called him for interrogation. The Enki was looking to create problems, and the officer that was interrogating him had to leave the room for a minute. And he noticed on the table, a note there against the Friedrich Rebbe. So the story is that he chewed it up and swallowed it, and it didn't exist anymore. So here you're talking about a person that had absolute Mesilas Nefesh for the Friedrich Rebbe. Unfortunately, he stooped a little bit, made a mistake, and he gave him access to go take this from him. Why did he take this for him? Because he felt that the Sfarim are his. Why are the Sfarim his? He made the following calculation. He said, look, my grandfather is no longer here. And if my grandfather is no longer here, there's no continuity to Lubavitch anymore. There's someone that they call the Lubavitch Rebbe today. I don't recognize him. Who is he to replace a person so great? He can't even replace my grandfather. So if that's the case, there's no longer Lubavitch. The whole organization doesn't exist anymore. So at that time, let's come and split the loot. Let's split it. One of the assets is the library. And the mother says, it belongs to me because there's no sons, there's only 2 daughters. I have a right to give you son. Now, somebody sitting here may look at me and said, hey, where did you come up with that idea? How do you come to say that he didn't recognize the Rebbe as an Rebbe, or that he thought that Lubavitch is over? That's a strong accusation for me to say. And the person that asked the question definitely has the right to ask, where'd you come up with that story? So let me tell you where I came up with the story. It so happens that his mother, after a number of incidents, his mother moved into him. And when his mother moved into him, she passed away over there. And when she passed away, arrangements were made for her to be buried. She was buried in a cemetery in New Jersey that belonged to the Munkat Chassidim. I'm not going to go into the details of that. That's a story for itself. I happen to be a member of the Chevra Kedisha, of the group that's called Chevra Kedisha. So the Chevra Kedisha, with the consent of the Rebbe, decided that we're going to be Menachem over him, and we're going to try to talk to him about bringing his mother to the Lubavitcher cemetery.
Before she was buried?
Huh?
Before she was buried?
After she was buried. What gave the idea to bring his mother to the Lubavitcher cemetery? Because if you visit the oil, that part of which you call Chelik Aleph of the oil was purchased in 1942 when the Friedrich Rebbe's mother passed away. The Rebbe's Nishtan Saba, who was the wife of the Rebbe Rashab. And at that time, they made a place with later they made a place to bury the Rebbe, but the Rebbe bought, the Friedrich Rebbe paid the Chevra Kedisha money for a number of spaces opposite the oil. And that's why opposite the oil, you'll notice, there's buried over there the Rebbe's Nishtan Saba, the Rebbe's in the Chamadina, the Rebbe's in Chaim Mushkin, and there's one more space, and that space is her space. So that gave the idea that the Friedrich Rebbe was probably wanted that that's where she should be buried. So the Chevra Kadisha decided that we'd go out to visit him and discuss it with him. Try to get him to agree. So 4 people went that evening to New Jersey. I was some of the youngest, and also I knew how to drive a car. And there was another Yid by the name of Beto Lipska. Beto Lipska is the secretary of the Chevra Kadisha. And then there were 2 Gaboyim from the Chevra Kadisha. One Gabbai name was Reb Levi Yitzchak Shapiro. We told you have to read Rosh Hashiva, Nachman Shapiro, that's the son of Levi Yitzchak. And the other one was Rabbi Tzvi or Herschel Fuchs. Rabbi Fuchs, besides being a member of the Chevra Kadisha, but he was also a Chava of Barry's back in Tzvatsk. What happened was, when the Friedrich Rebbe came to Varsha, so in the beginning they started the yeshiva in Varsha, and then they bought a property in a country area called Tzvatsk. And Barry, that time, was a boy of about 16 years old in stomach, and he needed a yeshiva. So the Friedrich Rebbe said he should go learn in the yeshiva. But the Bacham in the yeshiva at that time were a little bit older than him, not much older. So Rabbi Fuchs, Tzvi Fuchs, was assigned by the Friedrich Rebbe, by the Anhola, to be a chabrusa with Barry. Not only that, but I heard from Rabbi Fuchs that one of the things that they learned together was Yevamis, and the Friedrich Rebbe tested them in what they learned to recite the Yevamis. So these are the 4 people that came to visit him. We pulled up to the house. Usually a shiva house, the door's open because you expect people to keep coming. Over there, the door was locked. And we rang the bell, and his wife opened the door. And when she saw us, so she gave us a non-cordial bayach hamushov. In other words, she didn't give us a big compliment for coming. We didn't pay attention, and we just disregarded her. And we walked into the room, and he was sitting shiva over there. He was sitting shiva, and there were 2 people there, a husband and a wife. So we sat quiet the whole time. Only at one time did the man that came to visit him ask the question, and he didn't have an answer, so I gave an answer. I had to do with the Gemara and Brachos. Finally, when these people left, so she came in again and gave us another introduction, another Baruch Haba, and he very politely told her, please go upstairs. And finally, came to a conversation about burying or reinterring your mother in the lubavitch Chicago. He said 2 words to me, 2 words, and these 2 words told it all. What are these 2 words? He was telling us that he's concerned it may not be respectful to his mother, people wouldn't respect the place, So he said, listen to this, in Yiddish, so we could work it out. And then he said, a second time he said, we could work it out. Now listen carefully. That's not my Rebbe. It's your Rebbe. He's my uncle, that's about it. But he's not the replacement for my father, for my grandfather. This was the basis of his whole theory that lubavitch no longer exists. And if it no longer exists, so then it's all over. And if it's all over, you split the loot, and it's all over. So he felt that he did nothing wrong, and he felt he's entitled to it, and he felt he's allowed to take it. All why? Because there's no Rebbe anymore in Lubavitch. And that's why it's known that the Rebbe, when had a meeting with the Agudas Chabad, the Rebbe said to the Agudas Chabad, and made the banko. In other words, he means my throne. In other words, not that he wants to become Rebbe. He didn't have such crazy ideas. He didn't want his father to become a Rebbe, because he knew his father's a Chashuv, but he's not a Rebbe. And incidentally, going off on a subject, I'll tell you a very interesting thing. In Tafshin Yud, when the Friedrich Rebbe passed away, so the Rashag used to bring, the Rebbe used to bring, there were letters that came out signed by the Rebbe, by the Rashag, and by the Rebbe in the Chomedim. Only a year or two later did the Rashag come over to the Rebbe. And people asked the Rashag, what made you to decide to come over to the Rebbe? Well, in the beginning you had some machshava that maybe you should be Rebbe. Why did you decide? So I heard that the Rashag told him that I used to ask if I fragen dem Shvoga Sach Frages. I used to ask the Shvoga many questions. And the Shvoga, meaning the Rebbe, the Shvoga always answered my questions. But one time I asked him a question, and the Shvoga said to me, "Wenn ich komme von euch, I'll bring an infant." And the Rashag said, this I couldn't do. And he realized who the Rebbe was. But his son still felt that the Rebbe should not become Rebbe, and the Lubavitch should pack up, so to say, and close up shop. And B'meli, he was able to take and do whatever he wanted. Now, in the court papers, the judges use a word that he took it stealedly. Stealedly means begineva. He didn't take it begineva. It's not true. Every sale that he made of a sefer was not with cash. You had to pay him with a check. Because people know that when you want to do things that are maybe not older than kosher, you deal with cash. And usually people that buy svarim or buy svarim sale, use this ways how to run the cash. The best way to, I don't want to give any ideas over here, but the best way to run the cash is to invest in svarim. Two reasons. Number one, if you have a bookcase like over here with a cassette and everything, a gunner could break the glass and take the cassette. But if you have a safe on your shelf, no gunner is going to come, and none of us, we're not talking about a Hamish gunner. No gunner is going to come and take out that safe that you have. That's number one. And number two, you could bury cash in buying Svarim, and the Svarim go up in value. Look what's going on now in HSO with the auctions that are going on. For little things from the Rebbe, how much people are paying for it. So he knew that cash is not an honest way to do business. So you had to pay him by check. Not only had to pay him by check, but he gave you a receipt for it. Everything because it should be authentic, not to be any question. So with this approach, if this is what he wanted to accomplish, comes along Kehilas, and the judge paskins that the Rebbe is Rebbe, and that lubavitch is here to continue. So it's a tremendous victory. Because otherwise, if Chas v'Sholom, that case it went the other way, it would mean that the Rebbe Chas v'Sholom, I don't want to say the word even, and it would mean Chas v'Sholom that when the Rebbe came out the whole Shita, that we are the Doira Shri, and our purpose is to bring Mashiach, was all misleading and oilum. And thanks to Kehilas, what did we get? No, we got back a few hundred books, which are worth X amount of dollars. We got the Rebbe. No matter so, I don't have words to explain how great this day is. Use your own imagination and you'll understand what Hey Tavis is all about and why we continuously celebrate it and hope to celebrate it till we'll have the Rebbe with us.
Yeah.
Right. After all this, so some of you still want to hear what I got to do with 8 tables. So let me tell you the following. I have a cousin.
Hello?
My mother, Allah Shalom, and his mother are sisters. What sisters? They're not living with us. His name is Rabbi Eliezer Katzman. Now don't mix him up with any Katzman from Lubavitch. He's not from Lubavitch. His father was a Yeshiva in Tervidas. And he was and is an editor of a journal, Yeshudim, that comes out. That came out for many years. He's a big expert on Sfarim. Big expert. To the extent that there was a time in the theological seminary that has a tremendous library that they were looking for a head librarian, and they interviewed him and hired him to become the head librarian in the theological seminary. It was a well-paying position, and he accepted the position. But it so happens that his father, Rabbi Osher Katzman, was a nephew of Rabbi Avram Kamenovich of the Mir Yeshiva. Rabbi Avram Kamenovich of the Mir Yeshiva had a son by the name Shraga Moshe, who became the Rosh Yeshiva after him. And when Shraga Moshe heard that his cousin is becoming the librarian in Hebrew Theological, he came screaming that you are insulting our family. That you're insulting our family. He gave up the position, and he took a position, a managerial position in the MTA, the buses, trains, not driving the train, I mean, but a managerial, a good position. But he still had a love for Sfarim. And that was his life was Sfarim. One day he comes to me and says, Moshe, did you ever hear by chance of a Garari from New Jersey? So I say to him, I would imagine that Garari from New Jersey is the son of the Rashag. Rashag is the one that had his brother-in-law, the one that headed the yeshiva. I said, by the way, why are you asking me about a Garari from New Jersey? He said, well, I don't know, he said, but he happened to contact me, and he told me that he bought some Sfarim from a family in New Jersey, and he doesn't really know the value of them, and he needs someone to help him to appraise them and to sell them. Okay, good story. That was it. A few weeks later, on a Shabbos, before Yugesh Thomas, the Rebbe exploded about the Svarim. When the Rebbe exploded about the Svarim, so I called up my cousin and said, Laser, I think that story that you were told about the man is not true, and I'm suspecting that the Rebbe was referring to these to these Svarim. So he says, I'll tell you the truth. I became suspicious already about this guy because he told me different stories about different Svarim, and he doesn't remember all the things that he told me. And B'mela, so it could be that you may be right. You may be right. So, okay. When the story with the Svarim what happened was, the Svarim were disappearing. Every week another few Svarim were missing. So, and now that the Rebbe came out with the Talmud, there was a few big problems. One problem was that nobody knew what Svarim were taken. Not only that, nobody knew there was no stamp in any of the Svarim of the library that they belonged to the library. And how do we start to break this case? Now, I must go a little bit on a tangent. When I was a Talmud in the yeshiva, going back in the 1960s, so if we needed, the yeshiva did not have a real library. If we needed a sefer, there were a few choices. One choice was to take a trip to Theological Seminary in Manhattan, but that meant to take the train to 120th Street. Another choice was in Crown Heights, they lived on President Street, a Rabbi Rokeach. Rabbi Rokeach, he has a name and it's so bad at Shapiro. And Rabbi Rokeach had a tremendous library. I forgot what he called it, the cousin. And it was a pleasure to come to him, because he enjoyed when the Bochum came to him. And he would serve us some tea and some cake, and he would sit and schmooze with us.
That's what they came for.
He even once said to us about the Rebbe, he's talking about the greatness of the Rebbe, he says, Ich bin a mekana de bejoinus. If you understand what it means. But he was very, very receptive to us. And the third source was to talk to Chaim Lieberman. If you wanted a sefer, so you would write the name of the sefer on a piece of paper, on an index card, and leave it by Rabbi Chadekov's desk in the first office where you come over him. And the next day the sefer was there. He knew every sefer in the library. On his head, he knew every sefer in the library. But there wasn't a real catalog and a real order. It was chaos over there. So I asked my cousin, first of all, are you working for Barry? He says, yeah, I'm working. He hired me. I said, how did he come to hire you? He tells me the following story. When he took the first batch of Svarim, he was looking to sell them. Now in New York, they have what they call an auction house. One is Sotheby's and one is Christie's. So he went to one of these places over there. Now, I don't know what happened over there, but they were very suspicious that something was wrong. They didn't know what, but they didn't want to get involved. So he was stuck with the Svarim. What did he do with the Svarim if Sotheby's or Christie doesn't want to take it? When Sotheby's or Christie's make an auction, they publish a book called a catalog. And the catalog gives a description of every item that's on the auction. And they also, if they have religious items, so they have religious professionals, that they list their name, that they're the ones that wrote up the the description of these Jewish items. So it seems like he got a hold of one of those catalogs, and he saw that there are two people listed there as the experts. One, his name was, I don't remember the first name now. One, his name was Idolitz, and the second name was Katzman. So what he did was, apparently he found out how to reach these people, and he called up Idolitz, and he started asking him questions about Svarim. Do you know anything about this sefer? Do you know anything about this sefer? You know, and every sefer that he asked him about, he said, I know about it, but I got to look it up, and I'll get back to you, and I'll give you all the information. Then he says to him, are you available to be hired? So he said, yes. And what do you charge? I charge $100 an hour. Okay, thank you. Then in the English alphabet, Idolus is with an E and Katzman with a K. So he called Idolus first. Now he calls Katzman, and he says to Katzman, could you tell me anything about this and this sefer? He says, well, it depends which print you talk about. The print that was printed here in this year, or the print that was printed here in this year. You know. And then he asked him another sefer, and again, you know, if it's the bound together with this here, bound together with this here. He saw this guy is a tremendous bibliographer. He says to him, are you available for hire? He says, yes. What do you charge? $40 an hour. So you don't have to be a scientist to figure out to take the one that knows everything and charges $40 instead of the one that does nothing and charges $100. And he hired Katzman, and he made it with Katzman as he pay him $40 an hour, plus that for every sefer that Katzman sells for him, he gets a 5% commission from the sale. So I said to my cousin, Laser, do you by any chance have a list of the Svarim? He said, yes. I said, how'd you get the list? He gave me the list. I said, would you give me the copy? Can I make a copy of that list? He said, no. I said, why not? He said, because the only one that has that list is me. And it wouldn't be faithful of me. He'll find out later that the person that he trusted and hired and paid and everything behind his back gave away the list. I can't give it. I'm very sorry. As much as we're cousins and everything, I can't do it for you. So I'm stuck. Baruch Hashem, I got to brainstorm. I say, listen, Lisa, you have a list of about 400 Svarim. You can't give me the list. But what if I come to your office on J Street and by the MTA over there? I come to your office, give me a desk, let me sit over there, and I will rewrite the whole list by hand, but not in the order that you have it. In other words, what's over here by you will be over here. In other words, there's no way that you could be accused that you gave out the list. He says, you're right, that I could do. So I came to his office, I sat there for a few hours, I rewrote the whole list, and now we got the list and we know we're in business. I come to the list back to 770, and the person that I worked with, not with that actor, with that, I worked with Level Grona. And I gave Level Grona the list. It so happens, it sounds very strange, that the worldwide lubavitch didn't have a fax machine 40 years ago. Yeah, there was a fax machine by Rabbi Yom Klein in his house. Okay, that's parenthetically. So they ran with my list, and they sent it to two people. One person they sent it to, is there a circuit here?
A few.
What's his name? Yeshua Shleimer was your uncle in Eretz Huh? Yeshua Shleimer. One person that was the Yeshua Shleimer Zirkin. Huh? Yeshua Shleimer Zirkin, at one time, he had different professions. But at one time he was a dealer in Svarim and in antique Svarim. And it's a field for itself. So they sent it to him, in Exeter, to go around to the dealers to find out if anyone did any business with any of these Svarim. And another person they sent it to was Rabbi Feivish Vogel Ola Sholem in England. He wasn't in Svarim business, but they wanted him to, he had contact with Gevirim. Maybe he knows Gevirim that buy Svarim. And this way started the getting back to Svarim. This way started working, getting back to Svarim. To get back the first few Svarim that I worked on, I found out from my cousin Laser Katzman that one of the dealers that bought Svarim from him was a guy, I don't remember the first name, his name was Goldman. But this Goldman, in Crown Heights, they lived in Night Pestarov. And this is the son of the Night Pestarov. He was a dealer in used Svarim. So I came to him, and he readily gave me whatever he bought from him, and he showed a receipt that he paid money for. I paid him in cash, but he wanted cash for it, and he gave me the Svarim. And those were the first Svarim that started coming back from the whole list.
Where did you get the cash from?
Now, also, I should clarify, they say the popular opinion is that he took 400 Svarim. But the truth is that he didn't take 400, he took 550. How did we find out? Because when Rabbi Krinsky found out about this, he contacted Nat Lewin, the lawyer. And Nat Lewin said that the first thing we got to do, we have to stop him from selling. We got to stop the whole thing. So, being that his mother was with him, and his mother was siding with him, so it became already from two different states, it became a federal thing. So they went to a federal court in New York, and there was a Judge Glazer, and Judge Glazer ruled that everything should be stored. Everything should be stored in a bonded storage, and so then he gave out all the Svarim, and there were even more Svarim that Laser Katzman didn't have in his list. The total 550 Svarim. So that was the first Svarim that we got back.
The Rebbe proved we should buy it back.
Huh?
The Rebbe proved that we should buy it back.
The Rebbe, of course, approved that we should buy it back. The Rebbe said in the
Who
Farbrengen.
paid for it? Who paid for it?
The Rebbe said in the Farbrengen that whoever will show a receipt for Svarim that he paid, he will be paid back in full. The only thing is that I laid out the cash to pay Goldman, and then later I was paid back from Chalikov. Chalikov insisted giving me a check because he did everything very straight. So I had a question, my accountant had a question, how to report it, the income that I got over $20,000 for buying back Svarim. That's not Negeya. No. But after that, I found out an interesting thing. That Goldman was very generous. He right away gave me back everything that he bought. But I found out that it's not so poshut. That there's more Svarim that he sold already. And those Svarim that he sold, he didn't want to give, two things. He didn't want to lose his profit. He wasn't interested to get it back and pay, wipe it up with going. So he didn't want to lose his profit. And he didn't want anyone to know who his customers are. So I finally, I spoke with him, and I said, you know what, look, I skipped something, we'll go back to it. I said, you know what, there isn't Williamsburg at all, by the name of Official Hashkowitz. The Official Hashkowitz was in Europe before the war was called the Helena Dayan. And when he came to America, he became the Kosenberger Dayan. He was either a Zokin, a big Paisik, and we said, we'll ask the official Shaila what to do. So the official Paskin, that being that Barry didn't take the Sforim Bigneva. He didn't take it out to Ghana. He took it because he felt it's his. And being that you bought it, El Chahait, and you sold it El Chahait, so it doesn't apply to Dinim if you buy something from a Ghana if you want to do with it. And Mameli is entitled to make his profit. So once he did that, so he gave me back another few Sforim, and I paid him money, and Shalom Yisrael. Now, the Rebbe wanted a psak din from a Rav. Al pi din, a lot of people ask, why didn't they go to the Tayim? So the truth of the matter is that when they went to court, right in the beginning, when they went to court to stop the sale, so they went asking just for a TRO, a temporary restraining order. And the Moshe Paskins and other Paskins, that to go to court for a restraining order is not a question of Akois. And in the Akois Gufa over there, when they came to the Judge Glazer, so Nat Lewin said, all we're interested right now is in a restraining order to stop the sale. And their lawyer, his name was Hellerstein, said, no, we want the court to Paskin who it belongs to. So the whole story, if people will say, well, Lubavitch didn't go to the Titan, the whole story is Nika Steig and Nika Freude. So the Rebbe wanted a psak from a Rav, what the din is. Rebbe Brunner spoke to me and said, but the Rebbe wants a psak from a non-Lubavitch Rav. Why would the Rebbe want a psak from a non-Lubavitch Rav? Because the Lubavitch Rav, you know what he will say. So who will rely on him? So he asked me if I have anybody that could meet that qualification and get a psak from a Rav. So I told him I do. And I told him about this Rabbi Hershkowitz in Williamsburg, who I happened to know him from before from some other matter. And we went to him. I figured, you come to him, we may have to discuss halacha and everything. So I asked Rabbi Marlo Shom to come along together with me. So I called him up and I told him officially, I have a question I want to discuss with you. He said, Kimtzi, come over, So we came over and he listened and we told him the story, what happened over here. And we told him that the Lubavitch holds that everything belongs to the Rebbe, the Rebbe is everything, and the family holds different, and the Rebbe wants a psak. So all he said to me was a few words. He didn't speak a lot. He said, Nini, Kim Morgan, come tomorrow. The next day I came there. This time I didn't take on a mall with me already because I knew I'm just coming to pick up the psak. And his psak basically was that he's not going to get involved in what the Rebbe is, what Chassid is. He's not going to involve in that because that's not halacha in him. But he said, Al Pi halacha, he says, if a person gets married and he brings possessions into the wedding, so it's called Nifsei Mulug. And Nifsei Mulug, the din is that the guf, the property itself belongs to the woman, but the payers belong to the husband. And he said in this case over here, let's say, Taka, that the two sisters are Yoshim. The Rebbetzin and the Shag's wife, let's say that they're Yoshim. But even if they're Yoshim, so it's the guf belongs to them. But the payers belong to the husband. What is the guf? The guf is the svarim. What's the payers? The use of the svarim. And the din is that a woman cannot sell the nifsei mulug. If the husband wants it, it doesn't agree. So remember, being that over here, the husbands don't agree that the wife should sell it, so therefore they can't sell it. So who are they to give it away? That was the gist of his psak. And with this psak, it kept going further. The truth is, there was another psak that he also gave, and that other psak is also a reason could be applied over here also. And let me tell you a story. When they sold Svarim, there was one sefer that was known as Noyam Elimelech. Now, the Noyam Elimelech is considered a very holy sefer, and people have it as schus to have it in their home. In fact, I have home a Noyam Elimelech that was printed in America in the 1940s, and in it there's a big letter there from the Rebbe, and the Rebbe writes over there about the Gedusha to have the sefer, the Friedrich Rebbe, about the Gedusha to have the sefer in their home. There's people that would even buy pages of original Noyam Elimelech. So they had over here an original Noyam Elimelech, and he sold it. There was a dealer in Exeter by name Schwartz. He bought that, and he bought a set of Tanakh. But he didn't have enough money to pay him. So he made up that he's going to come back to Exeter. He'll wire him money to pay for it. Insufficient, in between, the Rebbe had this big Farbrengen when he exploded about this farm. And Schwartz heard about it in Exeter. And he called up my cousin and said to my cousin, Katzman, if this Noyam Elimelech you're talking about is from the Chabadski Svarim, I want nothing to do with it. And the deal was canceled. There was one sefer that he did take, that he paid for, that in Exeter, Chabad and Exeter returned him the money. To Schwartz. What?
Who paid them enough?
It went through Rabbi Ashkenazi. Yeah. In the book that I printed, there's a letter over there that my cousin, who's not a shop lubavitch chassid, wrote a letter of complaint to the Rebbe. And he writes to the Rebbe that he feels that the Rebbe owes him his 5% commission. Yeah. So the Rebbe, I don't have the book here, but the Rebbe answered him over there that it's known that in the Beis Harav, we don't want it to be Eved Levi Lishmalvin. In other words, that the Levi should be an Eved to the Malvin, and the Levi, if he'll bring a psak from a Rav that he's entitled to it, he will be reimbursed immediately. So he decided to go to ask a shayla by the official Heshbuz. And the official Heshbuz paskin that he's not entitled to the commission. Question, why not? So official Heshbuz said that the Dinish of Anorach, that if someone is typhus, Achash Shanoyla, that's something, so the tfisa is no tfisa. What does that mean? That means like this. If a Moshe you have two people that are partners in a business, and they decide to break up. One partner can't take out things from the business al cheshbon his chaylik that he has in the business. He can only first have a shuma to evaluate it, and after you evaluate it, then because it's possible that the things that you took already, thinking that they're not your full chaylik, maybe it was even more than your chaylik. So over here he said, in this case over here, let's say the two sisters Yashin. But if the two sisters Yashin, one can't take out on her own before it's up the shots and divide it up. Because it'll be a typhus, Akash never does something. And remember, if that's the case, they had no right to take it, and they had no right to give it to you to sell, and maybe you're entitled to your commission. Lifizeh is another reason why I'll begin the sale, not only because of Nifse Malug and the Stamshes, but they can't, the sister couldn't take things and give to her son because without the benefit of the other sister. So you have another story how it kept it up. So when okay. We got 25 minutes today. So let me now tell you another story. So in England, Rabbi Vogel was very successful in getting back a lot of Sfarim. And in HSO, they got back a lot of Sfarim. And I got back the Sfarim that I got from what's the name, from Goldman. But Idolitz, I couldn't get him, he didn't want to cooperate with me. Okay, so I found out that Idolitz, I found out that Idolitz was the buyer, was listed on the catalog.
Yeah, but he wasn't hired.
No, but I want to know if he bought any Sfarim from Barry, and he didn't want to tell me. So, first of all, I used to, in the days of Crown Heights, I had a yid in my shul who we had a chavrusa to learn together, and he decided that he didn't want to live anymore in Crown Heights. He lived on Crown between Nostrand and Rogers, and he went and bought a house in Muncie. His name is Viner. He has a son, a Rabbi Yossi Viner. I'm talking about the father. Okay. Yossi grew up in my shul. He got a mitzvah in my shul. So he worked for a company called, it belonged to Ludwig Jesselson. It belonged to Ludwig Jesselson. The first it belonged to Bentheim. It's a big trading company, so he made an arrangement that I should come to the company, the Jesselson company, Philip Brothers it was called, Philip Brothers, to give a share. So I did that for 8 years, and a few times Jesselson, the big fellow boss, who was also the president of Shaarei Tzedek Hospital, came to my share, so he knew me. And I found out that he was a collector of Sfarim. Like I told you before, Gevirim want to bury money, the best places in Sfarim. And I called him up, and I introduced myself, and he told me I should send him a list. I sent him a list, and he went through the whole list. Then he called me back and told me that he didn't buy any of these Sfarim recently. And he said, if you got back these few Sfarim, they're the very valuable one, be happy. Okay, that's his opinion. Okay. I called Idolitz. I wanted to find out if Idolitz bought any Sfarim. And he wouldn't cooperate with me. But here, I met Rabbi Feibish Vogel of Shalom, was in New York. And being that we had a common interest over here in the Sfarim, I got the list and he's the one that's working in England. So I was talking to him and I got into conversation. It seems like in England, I don't think he's living anymore, but there's a Gevir in England by the name, I think, Jack Lanza. Very wealthy Gevir, who's also a Sfarim dealer, a collector of Sfarim. And by the way, I told Feibish Vogel, I was very successful with the man Goldman, but there's another dealer, I'd like to get him, but I can't get him to work with me. He doesn't want to work with me. He came back to England, and he told it to Lonzo, to the big Gevir. Lonzo has a daughter in Manhattan, and I also told him that I heard that he works, that Idolitz is the buyer for Jesselson. Each Gevir, he doesn't buy alone. He has his expert that buys for him. That Idolitz is the buyer for Jesselson. Lunza called his daughter in Manhattan and told the daughter, talk to Jesselson to tell Idolitz to cooperate with Bogomolsky. It comes from Lunza's daughter. You know, we talk about all multi-millionaires. But here I am, I get a call from Idolitz. By the way, how are you, Rabbi Bogomolsky? How's it going? You know. He said, by the way, I happen to have a Haggadah. Are you interested in it? So I said to him, tell me something about the Haggadah. He says it's the Haggadah that was printed in Amsterdam. Okay. I asked him, how much? I said, did you buy it from Barry? He says, no. Somebody bought it from Barry for $1,700 and sold it to someone, to me, for $4,700. And I sold it to a third party for $5,200. So if you're interested to get it back, and you'll give me the $5,200, so I'll give you that bundle. I'll get you that bundle. I didn't know what to do. Because they never said that whoever will show a receipt what he paid, he'll be reimbursed. But if it went from hand to hand and from hand to hand, so how are you going to get this back? How should I deal with it? So I spoke to the label groner, and the label groner spoke to the Rebbe, and the Rebbe said that in such a case, Zomigensarov, and the business, the deal, the whole negotiation should take place in front of the Rav, and the Rav should confirm, again, that everything was done properly. Okay. So I called back Idolith. I said, by the way, who is your Rav? She says, I don't really have a Rav, but I learned in a yeshiva barba called Beis Shorim. Beis Shorim is the Menashe Klein. Unga. Yeah. He says, so I say, you know what? I know him also. He knows me. Why don't we meet by him? And I'll give you the check, $5,200, and you'll give me the same. So we made up for a time to meet over there. And this time, I didn't have to lay out the money because I knew already the price and everything. I knew what I'm going to buy. So I had a check already from Rabbi Chanukov for $5,200, made out the items. And we came to the Menashe Klein. And let me first explain something before I get to the punchline. Why would people pay $5,200 for Haggadah? So you have to understand, years ago, there was no such things as a Beis Yankov, a Beis Sarah, a Beis Rochel. There were no girls' schools. A girl grew up at home and learned at home how a Jewish mother has to conduct herself. But as far as reading and things like that, they were illiterate. They didn't know anything. So the big Yevidim used to make a sefer, get an artist to make a Haggadah with pictures. So by the Seder, they could sit by the Seder and discuss the pictures. And they'll discuss the pictures, so the mothers and the daughters already were participating in the Seder. So depending on the artist that made the pictures, it raised the value of the Haggadah. So this was vice versa, a prominent artist that made it. And B'meila, his artwork was worth $5,200. So I came to Menashe Klein with my check for $5,200. And Menashe Klein gave a letter to the Rebbe that I was there, and Idolus was there, and he knows us two as reliable people, and he wrote a few words. Even when he signed the letter, he signed his name Menashe ben his mother's name, which a chassid writes to Rebbe. Okay. Then he looks at me and he says, Rabbi Gamilski, $5200 für Haggadah. Wer gehört das Sach? So I said to him, Rav Klein, hier is the tale in aggressor Chiddush. There was another Haggadah, which was sold to someone in Zurich, and it was called the Kitzi Haggadah. Kitzi was the name of an artist, and it was sold for $150,000. It seems like there was some dealer that knew that there's only a few copies of this Haggadah available, and this people in Zurich has 3 of them, and this guy was a very wealthy man, and he'll pay any price to get another one. So he ended up paying $150,000 that Lubavitch had to pay him later to get back. He didn't want to give it back. It's not so partial. But they proved him that there was in Cambridge, in England, there was a person by the name of Kehilas Abramsky. And Kehilas Abramsky had a son, a librarian in Cambridge. And he wrote an article once about these Haggadahs. And he wrote that there are known to be 6 Haggadahs, and 3 are by this person, and 1 is of Lubavitch, and the other 2, I don't remember what he wrote, but somehow they proved him, but the person said, how do I know that this is your Haggadah? And he gave it back. When I told Rabbi Klein this story, he was shocked. He said, "Was $150,000 for a Haggadah? Mislam a parrot the chasnas are nomen after." Most of this. Okay. Rabbi Elman is asking a question. What all the Sodom gotten back? Very good question. So the truth is, according to my information, there were different types of Sodom. There were Sodom that were gotten back in Eretz Yisrael, and the Sodom that were gotten back in Eretz Yisrael are still in Eretz Yisrael, in the Beis Chabad, in 770 in Chabad. The Rebbe said, let them lay over.
You showed it yesterday.
You see, stimmt what I'm saying, right? Okay. Those were gotten back. And then there's the Sodom that I got back. And there's the Sodom that about 50 Sodom came back from England through Rabbi Feifish Vogel or Shalom. And there's a few Sodom that were not gotten back. I think a cheshbon of 8, if I remember the exact numbers. And the reason why they were not gotten back was because not every sefer was so rare and so popular. In other words, there may be 10 copies of it. So there's no way to know that this one, to come to get it. And some maybe they couldn't trace it, I don't know, but there's a few Svarim were not gotten back, but basically all the Svarim were gotten back at a cost. He got $160,000 for the Svarim that he sold, and it cost Lubavitch over $400,000 to get them back. Who gave the money? Lubavitch. I don't know I don't ask where the money comes from.
The psak didn't tell him that he has to leave.
Oh,
Yeah, no.
Rabbi Oberlin recognized him in Kasha. I didn't want to get into it, but because I made up till 8 o'clock. Okay. Let me. This is where I differ a little bit with some people on this subject. As I said, it costs.
Barry should have to pay back everything.
It costs over $400,000 to get back the Sodom. After the case was over, and Judge Sifton gave his ruling, and there was also an appeals court. The appeal court also gave the ruling. So there were some people in Lubavitch that decided that now we're going to go sue him for the $460,000 that they had to spend to get back this farm. The truth is that the judge was a little bit upset. And the judge told some Lubavitch representatives that it doesn't sound right. He said, I got you a library that's worth $40 million, and you're going to sue him for $400,000, and he doesn't have the money. But there were people that insisted, that you have to, the Kanoim or call them, you have to, push them all the way down. So they went and they made the suit. They made the suit. In order to make the suit, they had to prepare a list of all the svarim that were bought back and the exact price for each sefer, and to show that you paid that amount of money, and that no fictitious figures, and you paid that amount of money, and you're claiming damages. One day, I get a call from Bet 11. Bet 11 is the Rebbe's librarian, and he says to me, I don't know if it goes to Moshe or Rabbi Bogomilsky, I don't know what it called. He said, I got a big problem. I said, what's your problem? He says, the chazbainis are off by $100, which means that you got $100 from this whole deal.
Extra.
Yeah.
Commission.
That I got $100 from the whole deal. So first I was shocked a little bit, I knew that Baruch Hashem, I didn't make a penny profit from the whole deal,
Lost money.
Suddenly I'm being suspected that I got the whole. I realized what happened. What happened was, but before I tell you what happened, let me tell you a little Adoma. Okay. The father of the Adam, the Beit Moshe, had a sister in California. In California, there was a Rabbi Isaacson. And Rabbi Isaacson was a sister to the Beit Moshe. So, from time to time, the Beit Moshe would come to California to visit his sister. And there was a whole Ungarish Kehilas over there, in La Brea, the Beis Yehuda Shul. And the Satan Uruv is gekommen, they'd make a mesiba for the Satan Uruv. What was by the Satan Uruv? What was the mesiba? The mesiba was that, he came, that he gave him some lekach and some l'chaim, and people gave him some money. People gave money. I came a lot to California, I have connections over there, and I was friendly with Ungarish Yidden from California. So I asked one of the Ungarish Yidden in California, I don't understand, that the secret that comes here is a choshev thing, no question. But you got to give him money. He's richer than you. So he says, so the Yid said to me, Gavaldi Gavot, that Lubavitch, they don't understand this even. He says, Rab Bogomilsky, ins hat mir gelernt, als Ruf darf man geben. Yeah. Okay. Now, going back now to the Rebbe wanting to get an answer for the halacha, what's up the halacha? Huh? No. Okay. Getting back to the 11th question. I told you that I went to Rabbi Hershkowitz 2 times. one time with Rabbi Marlon, and one time myself. The first time I went with Rabbi Marlon, because they were getting in a conversation about kashering, about hesek panim, hesek chutz. We once wrote about it. They got in the conversation about it. What the Rebbe sheet is. The next day I came to pick up the psak cases. So I said to him, listen to this. I said, an official, jetzt megachak mahana sein. That means to give you something. All his answer was how he always answered, meaning, that means if you want to give. So I gave him $100. So Rabbi Groner told me, add that $100 into the money that you laid out. But it wasn't for a sefer. So Levine, who made the cheshbon, found that I made $100 profit. And this was the 100. But what happened now? So they ended up going to court. They ended up going to court. I don't know. They ended up going to court. And in court, Barry's lawyers decided that if you're going to sue our client for this money, we're going to sue the Rebbe. Huh? Personally. How are we going to sue the Rebbe personally? Because there was a story in 770 where a bacha went upstairs to the third floor where the Rashad lived and knocked on the door, and Chana opened the door, and the bacha gave her a punch and broke her nose. And they their lawyers timed that the Rebbe incited his chassidim, and the Rebbe is at fault. The Rebbe is at fault. So they were going to sue the Rebbe. If they're going to sue the Rebbe, they wanted to take the Rebbe on a deposition. The first time, I Mikashri and Melech, Ein Me'iden Oisei, Ein Donen Oisei, they wanted a deposition. In the first trial, they also wanted the Rebbe on a deposition, but the judge Paskin, there's nothing of it where the Rebbe is involved over here. So I see no reason to the deposition. But over here, I see no reason not to have the deposition.
Same judge?
So the hotheads realize that they're in trouble now. And what are they going to do? So they quickly made a settlement with him, with Barry, that they gave him, they dropped the case against him, and he had 11 svarim that were on the Friedrich Rebbe's desk, that he timed it that his grandmother gave him a present. He gave back the svarim that he took from the Rebbe's desk, and there was a tzavor that someone made with the Rashad when Chana wasn't home, that he's giving his money to the Rebbe, or to Machne Yisrael. So instead of that, they're going to forget about that tzavor and give him that money. And so the whole case was dropped, and Shalom Yisrael. That's how the story ended. But I didn't consider that a big victory, because the whole thing was maybe not necessary to do. That's my opinion.
What? It's a good punchline. Who's the boss?
I don't know what
No. There's a whole story. The Rebbe conducted. The Rebbe says, who knows what he could take? He could take either. Well, clearly didn't take. He didn't take any lubavitch things. He didn't take any lubavitch southern lubavitch farm. He didn't touch anything. What he knew, I don't know. just told me the fact.
Maybe that's what Lieberman gave.
There's a whole story to it, but it's not enough. I mean, he died.
Here. Which year?
The old man in the 90s.
Change your opinion. Oh my gosh.
Well, how hard is it?